Friends, if you're looking for a heart-wrenching and emotionally charged super hit film, you must watch Under the Same Moon, released in 2007. If you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with our amazing movie recommendations. In today's video, we're going to delve into a powerful and emotionally resonant film called Under the Same Moon. We'll explore its plot, where to watch it, and share some fascinating facts surrounding it. I'll reveal which OTT platform or satellite channel is currently streaming this beautiful film. We'll also delve into the technical aspects of the film, including its direction, music production, and post-production. Additionally, we'll discuss its budget, box office performance, and critical response. But that's not all. We'll also talk about the story of the film in detail. I'll share a short review and discuss the emotional depth of the characters. We'll explore the cast's performances and the actors who played each role. From behind-the-scenes details to touching storylines, we'll cover everything you need to know about Under the Same Moon. So, friends, don't miss out. Watch this video until the end to get the complete information about this movie that touches the heart and speaks about love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son. Let's begin the story of Under the Same Moon. The story unfolds with the gentle rhythm of everyday life, yet it carries within it the pulse of urgency, love, and a longing that refuses to be silenced. It doesn't rely on flashy narrative tricks or nonlinear timelines. Instead, it tells its story with clarity and compassion, following a classic linear structure, yet imbuing it with such emotional richness that it feels far more expansive than its simple frame suggests. We begin in a small Mexican village where 9-year-old Carlos lives with his loving grandmother. His mother, Rosario, has been living and working illegally in Los Angeles for 4 years. Sending money home to support them, they speak every Sunday morning on a payphone, clinging to those fleeting moments of connection. The opening scenes introduce a central theme of distance, showcasing how telephone becomes a lifeline, a fragile thread connecting a mother and son separated by a border. Carlos, on the other hand, is bright, hopeful, and perceptive beyond his years, while Rosario is fiercely protective and weighed down by the emotional cost of her decision to leave her son behind. Their love is the heart of the film, and it's this love that propels everything forward. The first major turning point strikes early. Carlos' grandmother, his guardian and last immediate family member in Mexico, dies suddenly. This moment, though quiet and understated in the film, is seismic. Caro, still just a boy, is faced with a terrible choice. Stay and risk being taken in by untrustworthy relatives, or take his fate into his own hands and try to find his mother with a mix of desperation and determination. Caro chooses the second option, and what follows is a journey that is part odyssey, part survival tale. He smuggles himself across the U.S. border with the help of 2 well-meaning but bumbling American teenagers. This crossing is not romanticized. It's risky, nerve-wracking, and painted with a realism that never lets you forget Caro's vulnerability. The moment he is forced to crawl under a van and is left stranded when the vehicle is towed away with him, hidden beneath it, is one of the film's most tense and symbolic moments. Caro is literally caught between worlds. From here, the structure becomes episodic, echoing the Picker-K tradition. Caro moves from one group of strangers to another, each encounter revealing something different about the immigrant experience in the United States. Some people offer him kindness, while others exploit him. These characters include a migrant worker named Enrique, who at first wants nothing to do with Caro but gradually becomes his protector. The evolving bond between Enrique and Caro forms the emotional core of the film. The heart of the second half of the film revolves around Enrique Gruff, a reluctant father figure who sacrifices his job, safety, and ultimately his freedom for his son, Carlos. Carlos's arc is quiet yet deeply moving, mirroring Rosario's own moral dilemmas in Los Angeles. Rosario struggles to maintain her job, keep hope alive, and make decisions about whether to marry a man she doesn't love just to gain legal residency. Meanwhile, Rosario tries to track down Carlos after hearing about his mother's death. There's a tragic symmetry in how close they are and how narrowly they keep missing each other. The film uses this almost misconnections device without turning it into melodrama. Each moment they're apart builds suspense, but not of the thriller kind. It's emotional suspense, where love will prevail over the barriers of geography, poverty, and bureaucracy. The final act of the film is a masterclass in restraint. Caros arrives in Los Angeles with only a few clues. Rosario once described the street corner where she calls him as a laundromat, a mural, and a Domino's pizza. He doesn't know the address. He only has his memory. Those few details are burned into his mind like a prayer. He walks the city streets with quiet desperation, his eyes scanning every corner looking for something familiar. Meanwhile, Rosario, convinced she may never find Caros, makes the painful decision to return to Mexico, believing her son has been lost. She stands at the bus terminal, defeated. Just as she prepares to board, Caros across town is about to give up hope as well. Then, in a moment crafted with aching simplicity, Carritos looks up and sees the mural, the laundromat, and the payphone. He sits at it, waiting. The camera lingers. Rosario, about to board the bus, glances across the street and sees him there. There are no dramatic musical swells, no speeches, just recognition and relief, and the kind of embrace that feels like it's holding together not just two people, but every mile, every hardship, every sacrifice that separated them. The emotional weight of the narrative is not built on spectacle but on empathy. Each moment serves the theme of connection between a mother and child, refusing to let anything, even a border, keep them apart. The film doesn't experiment with time or perspective, but it doesn't need to. The power lies in its simplicity, the idea that love can cross any distance, even when the world says it cannot. The journey of Under the Same Moon is both specific and universal. It's Caro's story, Rosario's story, but it's also the story of millions. It's about borders, but more than that, it's about what lies beyond them. The people, the longing, the resilience, and the quiet heroism of those who risk everything for family. The characters in Under the Same Moon are not simply figures used to move the story forward. They are the story. Every emotion, every choice, every hesitation or leap of faith is tied directly to who these characters are, what they believe, and what they carry within them. They're crafted with a kind of quiet intricacy, never overly explained, but always felt. Their arcs are not loud or exaggerated. They echo with emotional truth and grow in ways that mirror the film's deep themes of sacrifice, resilience, and unconditional love. At the center is Caro, a 9-year-old boy, but never just a boy. From the moment we meet him, he's smart, observant, and independent. He's the kind of child who listens more than he speaks, who notices the details, the sound of his mother's voice through a phone line, the rhythm of the streets around him, the subtle shifts in people's tones. Caro's arc is rooted in transformation through courage. He doesn't start out wanting to be a hero. He just wants his mother. But the things he endures, the border crossing, being left behind, evading exploitation, and ultimately forging unlikely alliances, force him to grow into someone stronger, more determined, and more aware of the world's harshness. He learns to navigate it. Uncertainty permeates the narrative, yet it never erodes the tenderness that makes his journey so profoundly affecting. His growth isn't about becoming tougher. It's about holding on to love even as the world tries to strip it away. Rosario Carritos' mother, a woman suspended between two lives, the one she left behind in Mexico and the one she's struggling to build in the United States, motivates her actions with unwavering clarity. Every job she takes, every moral line she considers crossing, is for her son. Her arc, however, is more internal. Rosario undergoes a slow-burning transformation. At first, she's emotionally restrained, almost brittle, fearing vulnerability because the stakes are so high. If she lets her guard down, if she loses hope, she risks everything. As obstacles mount and Caros goes missing, Rosario's tightly held emotions begin to unravel. She becomes more expressive, more human in her pain. When she finally decides to return to Mexico, believing her son may be lost, it's not an act of defeat but of surrender to truth. Her journey isn't from weakness to strength. It's from self-protection to emotional openness. Then there's Enrique, the reluctant companion turned unlikely father figure. His arc might be the most quietly profound. Introduced as gruff, indifferent, and annoyed by Caro's presence. Enrique represents a kind of man hardened by experience. But Carritos' honesty and persistence chip away at those layers. At first, Enrique helps him out of obligation or maybe just a flicker of conscience. But each act of protection becomes more personal, more emotional. He begins to see in Carritos not just a child in need but a version of himself, a younger, more hopeful self he thought he had buried. His final act in the film, where he creates a diversion to allow Caros to escape and find his mother, is not only a moment of bravery but of redemption. He sacrifices his own freedom without hesitation, and in that moment, he becomes more than a protector. He becomes a father figure, a hero not defined by grandiose gestures but by quiet, selfless love. Even secondary characters are given weight. The two college students who attempt to smuggle Caros across the border aren't portrayed as simple caricatures. They're flawed but well-meaning, nervous but not cruel. The woman who offers Caros a brief place to stay is jaded but still compassionate. The film never paints anyone as fully good or evil. Even those who exploit or ignore Caros are shown within the pressures of their own lives. This nuanced treatment of characters allows the audience to perceive the immigrant experience in shades of gray, not in absolutes. What's striking is how the relationships between characters aren't static. They bend, shift, and deepen. Caros and Enrique begin as strangers, then allies, and eventually something like family. Rosario and Caros maintain their bond through absence, through the intangible space of memory and longing, until that bond is finally made tangible in the film's final scene. The tension between connection and separation shapes every interaction. The motivations across the board are deeply human. Survival, love, dignity, and hope. However, they're expressed in different ways. Rosario's motivation is grounded in sacrifice and responsibility, while Caros is fueled by faith and determination. Enrique's is rooted in redemption and empathy. These differences don't divide them. They weave a richer emotional tapestry as the story progresses. These characters are tested not by fate alone but by their own limits. They face decisions that shape them. They don't just survive events. They're changed by them. Their transformations aren't transformations of personality but of spirit. They emerge from their trials more exposed, more vulnerable, but also more fully themselves. The film's quiet, intimate, and compassionate tone amplifies this character-driven storytelling. The mood is one of longing, yes, but also of quiet hope. The narrative never yells. It speaks volumes through gestures, glances, choices made in silence, and through these characters, under the same moon, tells not only a story of crossing borders but of crossing into one another's hearts, slowly, deeply, irrevocably. The emotional power of Under the Same Moon doesn't come from spectacle or special effects. It comes from performance. The entire cast breathes life into the characters with a kind of emotional precision that doesn't just depict a story. It feels it into being. These aren't just actors reciting lines. They inhabit their roles so fully. The audience doesn't witness performances. They see people. It's this raw human authenticity that transforms the film into something intimate and lasting. At the heart of it all is Adrián Alonso, who plays Caros. His performance is nothing short of remarkable. There's always a risk when a child leads a film. Sentimentality can become forced, or complexity can be flattened. But Alonso carries Caros with a rare balance of innocence and grit. He never plays the character as a victim, even when the world is crashing around him. There's a quiet bravery in his eyes, a naturalness in the way he listens, responds, and moves through scenes. What makes his portrayal so powerful is its understatement. He never overacts his fear, hope, or strength. All feel lived in when Caro sits alone on a bus or searches the streets of Los Angeles with quiet desperation. Alonso doesn't need words. His silence is the performance, and it hits with a quiet force that stays with you. Audrey Alonso's performance as Carritos and Under the Same Moon is the emotional cornerstone of the film. It's honest, layered, and profoundly human. What makes his portrayal so resonant is not just his ability to carry the narrative as a child actor, but how he communicates emotional complexity with clarity and restraint. There's a rare maturity in his performance, but it never feels out of place or unnatural. Alonso plays Carlos not as a precocious child wise beyond his years in the typical cinematic sense, but as a boy who has had to grow up fast because of the world around him. That distinction is crucial from the very first scenes. Alonso roots Carlos in emotional truth. The character's life is filled with absence. His mother is in the US, his father is a myth, and his grandmother, though loving, is aging and ill. Yet Alonso never plays Carlos as pitiful or broken. Instead, we see a boy who has developed a quiet resilience. In the scenes where Carlos listens to his mother's voice over the payphone, Alonso uses silence to convey volumes. His eyes carry the weight of longing, but he never lets it show. Tries to milk the moment for sympathy, which is the key to his performance. It's never manipulative. It doesn't tell the audience how to feel. Instead, it invites them to feel with him as the story progresses. Carlos embarks on his journey to find his mother. Alonso's physical performance becomes even more essential. His body language changes subtly depending on the situation. In the early scenes, he stands upright, alert, and cautious. As he moves deeper into unfamiliar environments, being smuggled across the border, sleeping on the streets, and navigating the terrifying adult world, his movements become more tentative. Trembling breath throughout the film. Adrian Alonso's performance never feels like acting. He doesn't chase emotional highs or dramatic crescendos. Instead, he anchors Carlos in real emotional stakes and reacts authentically to the world around him. He lets the situations shape his expressions, whether he's bargaining for a bus ticket, negotiating with street vendors, or holding back tears on a payphone. There's always a truth in his eyes. Alonso's portrayal of Carlos is not just impressive because of his age. It's impressive because it's emotionally intelligent, instinctive, and grounded in reality. He becomes the vessel through which the audience experiences the complexity of migration, the pain of separation, and the quiet defiance of love. His performance never demands anything. Attention, but it earns it moment by moment until it's impossible to look away. Opposite him is Kate del Castillo, portraying Rosario Caro's mother. Her role demands emotional restraint, as Rosario is not a character who wears her heart on her sleeve. She's guarded, tough, and often burdened with the quiet suffering of someone who's had to make impossible choices. Del Castillo's portrayal perfectly reflects that. She doesn't rely on dramatic outbursts. Her pain is etched in her stillness, her gaze, her refusal to cry in front of others. Yet, even through her controlled composure, you feel everything. Her longing, guilt, love, and fear. There's a moment where Rosario listens to Caro's voice on the phone, and without saying much, she conveys the crushing weight of a mother separated from her child. It's not a moment of theatrical drama. It's one of pure emotional honesty, and that's where Del Castillo's strength lies. Kate del Castillo's portrayal of Rosario in Under the Same Moon is a masterclass in restraint, nuance, and emotional depth. Her performance doesn't cry out for attention. It doesn't need to. It lives in the space between words, in silence, in tightly drawn expressions, and in the aching stillness of a woman who has learned to carry her suffering quietly because there's no other choice. Del Castillo never pushes for empathy. She earns it with emotional precision. Rosario is complex not because she's portrayed with grand gestures, but because she's rendered with truth from her very first appearance. Rosario is a woman, emotion cleaning houses, navigating the expectations of her employer, struggling to stay afloat in a world that demands more than it gives. Yet, within that flurry of activity, Del Castillo brings a stillness to the character. There's a visible tension under the surface. Rosario is emotionally disciplined, controlled, and this choice, this internalized energy, is exactly what defines her. She's not emotionally distant because she's cold. She's distant because she has to be, because breaking down even for a moment might unravel. In Rosario's interactions with Carlos on the phone, we witness the dualities within her. She constantly balances tenderness and discipline, longing and strength. Del Castillo's voice softens as she speaks to him, but there's also a measured edge and a subtle tightness, as if she's holding something back. It's not just tears, it's fear. She doesn't want to scare Carlos or make him feel her uncertainty. So, Del Castillo fills those phone conversations with layers. She smiles through her voice, but her eyes betray the truth. There's always that flicker of guilt that aches just beneath the surface, the performance of someone playing a mother trying to be strong, not just for herself but more importantly for her son. One of the most telling scenes that showcases Del Castillo's quiet brilliance is the moment where Rosario must decide whether to marry Paco, the security guard who offers her a green card. The scene is loaded with tension, but it's not played like a melodrama. Del Castillo doesn't raise her voice or burst into tears. Instead, she sits across from Paco, polite and composed, but hollow-eyed. You can see her doing the math in her head. Dignity versus survival, shame versus sacrifice. Her stillness is the tension. She says little, but her silence is dense with emotion. In this moment, Del Castillo captures the devastating position many immigrant women face. The pressure to trade autonomy for security. Rosario's decision not to go through with the marriage isn't just an act of morality. It's a reclamation of her agency. Del Castillo delivers that message with nothing but a look. Del Castillo also brings to Rosario a quiet pride, especially in the way she interacts with her environment as a domestic worker in a wealthy home. Rosario never shrinks, but she never lashes out either. She endures microaggressions with poise, maintaining a kind of dignity that doesn't need to be announced. She wears her resilience like a second skin. Del Castillo never allows Rosario to become a victim in the performative sense. Instead, she plays her as a woman constantly calculating how much she can bear and how far she can bend before she breaks. Perhaps the most emotionally resonant scenes come near the end of the film when Rosario begins to fear she may have lost Carlos in these moments. Del Castillo subtly shifts the emotional weight from control to vulnerability. Her movements become more frantic, and her voice rises not in a theatrical outburst but in a breaking cadence, like a woman who's been holding in grief for far too long. There's a rawness in her face when she finally allows herself to consider the worst, but even then, she doesn't fully collapse. Del Castillo understands that Rosario can't collapse not until she's absolutely sure the restraint remains. But now it's trembling at the edges in the final scene when Rosario and Carlos are reunited. Del Castillo allows herself at last to let go. Her run to him is not polished. It's messy, breathless, real. And when she finally embraces her son, all the emotional restraint that has defined her character spills out not in words, but in the way she clutches him like someone pulling herself back from the edge of loss. There's a visible release in her body, a trembling collapse into love. There's a payoff that works because she's held back so much for so long. The catharsis isn't in the reunion itself, but in everything Rosario has survived to reach it. What makes Castillo's performance unforgettable is that she resists every opportunity to play Rosario as a symbol. She doesn't turn her into a martyr, a hero, or a victim. She plays her as a mother, a woman, a human being who is scared, angry, proud, tired, and above all, full of love. She never pleads for sympathy. She simply is that commitment to emotional truth to the specificity of Rosario's experience. This gives the film its pulse. Del Castillo's Rosario is a portrait of strength forged through endurance, love honed through absence, and hope stretched across distance. It's a role that could have been flattened into stereotype in less capable hands, but in hers, it becomes something truly remarkable. Something deeper, something that lingers long after the credits roll. One of the most emotionally affecting performances comes from Eugenio Derbez as Enrique, the reluctant guardian who grows into a protector. Known primarily for his comedic roles in Mexican media, Derbez surprises the audience with depth, nuance, and subtle transformation. He brings a grounded realism to Enrique, a man shaped by hardship, hardened by life, yet still capable of tenderness. What's extraordinary is how much he expresses without words. His early scenes are full of irritation and detachment, as he doesn't want to be responsible for a child. But slowly, as Carlos swings him over, Derbez's physical language softens his voice, lowers his defenses, and drops there. There's no single moment when Enrique changes. It's gradual, believable, and deeply moving. His final act in the story, when he sacrifices his own freedom for Carlos, feels like the natural culmination of a journey not only of affection but also redemption. It's a quietly heroic performance that never asks for applause, and that's exactly what makes it resonate. Supporting roles, though smaller in screen time, are equally rich. America Ferrer makes a brief but memorable appearance as one of the students helping Kairos cross the border in just a few scenes. She conveys youthful fear, uncertainty, and a flickering sense of moral conflict. Her panic when things go wrong feels painfully real. Similarly, Carmen Salinas, who plays Caro's grandmother, brings warmth and weariness to the screen in equal measure. Her scenes are few, but she anchors the beginning of the film with a kind of maternal strength that lingers long after her character's exit. Every minor role, every passerby in Caro's journey, adds texture to the world. From the exploitative employer in the tomato fields to the kind woman who gives him shelter, the performances, whether kind or cruel, are never exaggerated. Everyone seems to understand the soul of the film. It's about real people with real desires, flaws, and decisions that ripple with consequence. What binds these characters together is a shared humanity. Performances together are a shared emotional truth, not just roles played. They are participating in a portrait of separation and survival, longing, and resilience. The film's tone is understated, almost quiet at times, and the performances reflect that perfectly. They don't announce their intentions or plead for sympathy. Instead, they invite the audience to observe, feel, and understand. In Under the Same Moon, the cast doesn't just enhance the emotional depth of the story. They are the emotional depth itself. They take a simple narrative and elevate it into something deeply human. By doing so, they transform the screen into a space of empathy, where the audience is not just watching a story unfold, but living inside it. Patricia Riggen's directorial debut, Under the Same Moon, crafts a film that is as intimate as it is expansive, emotionally grounded as it is thematically urgent. Her storytelling choices are purposeful, grounded in human realism, and always in service of the film's emotional heartbeat. She directs with compassion but also with a quiet boldness, unafraid to let silence speak louder than words and to let small gestures carry the weight of impossible distances. The film's tone is perhaps its most masterfully calibrated element. Riggen avoids the overt sentimentality that stories about immigration and separation often risk. She doesn't manipulate emotions, she invites them. The tone is tender but never soft, carrying the weight of hardship and uncertainty, yet infused with hope, defiance, and deep-rooted love. It's this careful balance that makes the film emotionally rich without ever feeling exploitative. The sadness is real, but so is the resilience. Riggen ensures that the audience sits with both from the very beginning. Riggen sets the mood through visual contrast. Caro's life in Mexico is sunlit, textured, full of earth tones and warmth, even in poverty. The colors are vibrant and alive. Rich the spaces lived in, there's a tactile sense of home in those opening scenes, even in their hardship. By contrast, when the film shifts to the United States, the aesthetic subtly changes. The light becomes colder and more diffuse, the architecture more impersonal, and the world feels bigger but lonelier. This tonal contrast supports the emotional tension. Kairos and Rosario each feel caught between two places, each incomplete without the other. This is one of Riggen's most effective stylistic choices. Riggen's use of parallel storytelling is another powerful technique. The film moves back and forth between Kairos and Rosario, two lives connected by phone calls and memory, but separated by geography. Riggen never lets either perspective dominate this duality, giving the audience a deep emotional context. We don't just feel Caro's fear as he navigates a strange new world. We also feel Rosario's mounting desperation as she holds on to hope from across the border. Riggen carefully synchronizes their emotional beats. When Caro stares out at the night from a motel room, we see Rosario doing the same from her apartment. These visual echoes tether them together across miles. It's a subtle storytelling mechanism, but a powerful one. Pacing plays a crucial role. The journey unfolds in carefully modulated rhythms. The beginning is slower, more contemplative, focusing on the rituals of separation. Phone calls, remittances, letters, longing glances. But once Kairos begins his crossing, Riggen tightens the pace. Scenes become more transient, fleeting like the journey itself. Danger flickers in and out. The film never becomes a thriller, but it leans into suspense when it needs to. The pacing reflects Kairos' internal state. Fear, adrenaline, determination. Even during the more action-driven segments, Riggen refuses to abandon the emotional intimacy. She stays close to Kairos, keeping the lens tight on his face, ensuring we feel not just the danger, but the cost. Composition is where Riggen's vision becomes most poetic. She uses framing to underscore themes of separation and isolation. P1s are framed at the edge of the screen, often with long empty spaces between the characters and the background. The film emphasizes distance, disconnection, and the border. Instead of towering walls, border fences are portrayed as lines between loved ones, lines that might be crossed or remain permanent. Cars are often shot from a slightly lower angle, not to empower the protagonist, but to remind us of his smallness in this vast and uncertain world. However, in key emotional moments, such as when he finally stands up to Coyote or makes a crucial decision, the camera comes level with him. This subtle yet significant gesture conveys his growth. Riggen also resists using music to overtly guide the audience's emotions. Carlos's score is gentle, restrained, and lingers in the background, accenting moments rather than defining them. Riggen understands the power of ambient sound, street noise, footsteps, breathing, silence, especially silence, which contributes to some of the film's most heartbreaking moments. Rosario listening to her son's voice on a cassette, Caro sitting alone surrounded by people who don't see him. These scenes work because Riggen trusts the visual language of film more than exposition. She doesn't explain emotions. She shows them and lets them linger. The supporting world she builds around Kairos and Rosario also speaks volumes about her narrative priorities. Side characters are not caricatures. They are shaded with humanity, even in their brief appearances. From the undocumented workers who help Kairos to Enrique, the reluctant protector, Riggen uses these encounters not as plot devices but as reflections of the many forms of connection that exist among the displaced. Solidarity, mistrust, kindness, indifference, and all of it feels real. Riggen doesn't flatten the immigrant experience into a singular narrative. She lets it sprawl, nuanced, and multivocal thematically. Riggen's direction is focused on love, not the idealized version, but love under pressure, love as work, love as sacrifice. Love transcended borders and time zones, shaping the film around this central idea. Riggen ensures that Under the Same Moon doesn't merely recount a story about immigration. It delves into the profound cost of loving someone from afar. She avoids romanticizing the struggles but also refrains from letting them extinguish the beauty. Her vision is humane and deeply respectful, evident in every frame. It feels as though the film was crafted by someone who intimately understands the experience. An emotional authenticity permeates every scene, rooted in Riggen's meticulous attention to detail, tone, and the inner lives of her characters. Her directing choices are subtle yet undeniably powerful. She doesn't need to shout to evoke emotions. She whispers, and somehow, it hits harder. Cinematography goes beyond visual tools. It serves as a quiet narrator, whispering the emotions that characters often struggle to articulate. Chechev's director of photography weaves a visual poetry that subtly underscores every emotional beat and thematic thread. Camera angles, lighting, and framing are not mere aesthetic choices, but emotional instruments that mirror the internal states of the characters and the shifting landscapes of their journey. From the very first frame, the camera guides us through our emotions. Caro's world in Mexico is bathed in warm, sun-drenched light. It's not the golden glow of comfort or luxury but of home. Earth tones dominate: burnt orange, dusty browns, faded greens, and the lighting feels natural, unpolished, and human. The camera often lingers on small, tactile details. The creases of a worn couch, the steam rising from food, the shadows cast by iron gates. These are not merely atmospheric choices. They create intimacy. We're not just watching Caro's world. We're inside it. Ver uses framing to communicate Caro's emotional reality. In early scenes, Creando is often placed in the center of the frame, surrounded by wide-open space. This framing subtly conveys her emotional state. He emphasizes his isolation, highlighting that he is loved, yes, but also alone, burdened by the separation from his mother after his grandmother's death. When he embarks on his journey north, the camera suddenly shifts, Caros shrinking within the frame, swallowed by the vast landscapes of desert highways, city streets, and unfamiliar interiors. These visual choices reflect how enormous the world has suddenly become for a 9-year-old with no guide. Throughout the film, Caros is frequently filmed from slightly below or at a child's eye level, a choice that grounds us in his perspective. We are not looking down at him. We are with him when he waits in the shadows at a bus stop or crouches behind a dumpster. The camera settles at his level, giving his story emotional weight, refusing to infantilize him. It also allows the world to loom larger, emphasizing both his courage and vulnerability when moments of danger arise. Whether it's an encounter with immigration officers or a near deportation, the angles become more angular and the movements more restless. Verse doesn't resort to handheld chaos, but there is a controlled tension in how the camera breathes with the characters. One visually striking moment unfolds during Caro's attempt to cross the border, hidden in the floor of a van. The interior is dark, tight, and claustrophobic, with light filtering in through small slits, fragmenting the space with thin beams. This isn't just a suspense device. It's a metaphor for Caro's world at that moment. Fractured, dim, uncertain, and barely holding together. The camera lingers on his face in the low light, catching his silent panic. The restraint in this scene, the refusal to cut away too quickly, makes the audience sit with the discomfort, sharing the airlessness with him. In contrast, Rosario's world in Los Angeles is often portrayed with colder, starker lighting. Her apartment is bathed in pale light, less warmth, more stillness. Even when sunlight enters, it feels filtered, distant. This lighting is an extension of her emotional state. Suspended, waiting, holding. When she is at work in wealthy homes, the light is sterile, overexposed, almost clinical. There is a sense of disconnection from the warmth of her life back in Mexico. These shifts in lighting aren't loud, but they create a tonal duality. Two worlds connected by phone calls, but separated by atmosphere. Framing becomes especially important in scenes of phone calls between Rosario and Creando. In each of these moments, both characters are isolated in the frame, usually surrounded by empty space or positioned against a wall. A blank background underscores the void between Rosario and Caros, emphasizing that their connection exists solely through sound, not touch. Often, a window behind Rosario or Caros during their calls serves as a symbol of both longing and separation. VAR often allows the light to shine through those windows, suggesting that love exists just beyond the glass, just out of reach. There are moments when the cinematography leans into the poetic, such as when Creando walks along the edge of a dusty road at dusk. The light is low, and the sky is bruised with purples and oranges. He is silhouetted against a sprawling landscape, a small figure against the vastness of the surroundings. These images speak volumes about scale, the smallness of a boy versus the enormity of his task. However, rather than feeling defeated by it, the visual language imbues him with quiet heroism. He moves forward, and the camera never leaves him behind. The final scenes when Creando and Rosario come close to reunion are visually restrained but emotionally potent. Vasquez resists grand cinematic gestures, instead letting natural light flood the bus terminal. Shadows are soft and the space is open. When Rosario turns and sees Caros across the street, the camera captures the moment with delicate reverence. No dramatic zoom, no music swell, just two people in a shared frame. Finally, after so many scenes of separation, they are together, not only emotionally but visually. The composition becomes simple, symmetrical, and full. It's a moment of stillness that carries the weight of the entire journey. Under the Same Moon cinematography is never ornamental. It doesn't call attention to itself but constantly communicates. It tells us when to hold our breath, when to feel the weight of silence, and when to lean into hope. Vary and Riggen in collaboration build a visual world that reflects the emotional landscape of migration. Vast, uncertain, lonely, but also punctuated by fierce beauty and quiet acts of love. The camera becomes an extension of the story's emotional core, never detached, always witnessing, always searching for home. A film that speaks in quiet, steady rhythms. Beneath its gentle surface lies a deeply layered exploration of migration, sacrifice, family, and resilience. It doesn't shout its themes or argue. Instead, it invites the audience to feel their weight. As a result, the emotional and thematic undercurrents are powerful, sometimes painful, sometimes hopeful, and always human. At the heart of the film lies the idea of love stretched across borders. The bond between Rosario and Carritos is not broken by distance. It is redefined by it. Their love becomes an act of endurance, longing, and silent sacrifice, all under the same moon. This reframes parenthood as something far more complex than proximity. Rosario is physically absent but emotionally ever-present, while Carlos is emotionally resilient but physically vulnerable. The film challenges conventional ideas of family unity, showing instead that love can survive and even deepen in separation. This theme speaks directly to the immigrant experience, where millions live suspended between two worlds, trying to hold on to what matters most while surviving what comes next. The film is also an exploration of sacrifice and the quiet dignity of struggle. Rosario's life in the United States is not glamorized. She works multiple jobs, faces constant threats of deportation, and lives in a state of emotional limbo. But she does it not for a dream of success. Instead, she does it for something more essential, the hope of giving her son a better life. Carlos too becomes a mirror of this sacrifice. His journey is not framed as heroic in the traditional sense. It's dangerous, desperate, born from necessity. Yet, within that necessity, there is a profound courage. The film asks a haunting question. What would you risk to be with the person you love most? For Rosario and Carlos, the answer is everything. Another thread woven throughout the film is identity and belonging. Carlos's physical journey mirrors his emotional journey. He moves through unfamiliar spaces, cultures, languages, and expectations. He is seen as a child in some moments and forced to confront the realities of adulthood. Act as an adult in others, the film captures the in-betweenness of migrant identity. Carlos is not fully at home in the place he left, nor is he yet accepted in the place he's headed to. There's a moment when Carlos is told not to speak Spanish, treated as a problem and an outsider. Yet, through all of this, his sense of self never vanishes. His determination becomes a quiet act of resistance. Rosario's own struggle with identity is more internalized. She tries to remain invisible to avoid deportation, but that invisibility comes at a personal cost. She's constantly torn between being the good worker in someone else's household and the mother she longs to be. The film presents this tension without melodrama. Instead, it lets her silence speak volumes. Her carefully composed demeanor, her refusal to cry at work, her quiet defiance. There's a deep commentary here on the emotional cost of invisibility, especially for undocumented immigrants who are often seen only in terms of labor and legality, not humanity. A particularly moving theme is the idea of chosen family and human connection in unexpected places. Carlos encounters strangers, some who exploit him, but many who help him. From Ray and Martia, the two undocumented workers who give him a ride, to Tenrique, the reluctant protector who ultimately sacrifices everything for him. The film emphasizes the quiet solidarity that exists among those on the margins. These aren't saviors. They're people who understand pain, who recognize the urgency in Caro's situation. The film never presents these moments of kindness as grand gestures. They're small, often quiet, sometimes awkward, but they're acts of moral courage in a world that too often turns its back. It's a reminder that sometimes, family is not who you're born to, but who you find when you need the most. The theme of childhood and lost innocence also pulses beneath the surface. Carlos is only 9 years old yet. His emotional intelligence is far beyond his years. He carries himself with a quiet strength that comes not from naivety but from necessity. The film doesn't rob him of his childhood entirely. He still laughs, still wonders, still hopes, but it places him in situations where he must navigate danger, trust strangers, and make adult decisions. There's an aching honesty to this portrayal, reflecting the real experiences of countless migrant children whose lives are shaped by forces far beyond their control. The film doesn't pity Karos. It honors him. Threaded through all of this is the quiet, persistent theme of hope. Not the grand gestures, but the small, often quiet, sometimes awkward acts of moral courage in a world that too often turns its back. Glossy, sanitized version of hope, yet the kind that persists despite adversity. Hope emerges in Caro's act of tracing the payphone his mother always calls from in Rosario's decision to finally return home. Enrique's selfless act of decoy plays a pivotal role in every step forward taken by those who lack a guarantee of a happy ending, yet they persist. The film refuses to offer closure or resolution, instead suggesting that love, persistence, and connection are sufficient to carry us through even the most uncertain terrain. In a world saturated with noise, the film speaks in a language of quiet truths, its themes unfolding like whispers. Steady, emotional, and unflinching, these themes linger long after the film ends. They don't present arguments but rather questions. How far would you go for someone you love? What does it mean to belong? What is home? By asking these questions, the film doesn't just tell a story. It opens a conversation that continues across borders, phone lines, and beneath the same moon. In Under the Same Moon, the settings and production design don't merely provide a backdrop for the narrative. They shape the film's emotional texture. The environments feel lived in, emotionally charged, and carefully constructed to mirror the characters' inner states. Each space, whether humble or harsh, open or claustrophobic, adds depth to the story by evoking a strong sense of place and the realities tied to it. In a film that revolves so deeply around displacement, longing, and survival, the physical world becomes a character in itself. The story begins in Caro's small home in Mexico, and from the first shot, this world feels tactile. It's not idealized or romanticized. The walls are slightly faded, the furniture is worn, the streets dusty and sun-beaten, yet it all pulses with life. The modest home he shares with his grandmother is filled with small, telling details. Carefully folded laundry, the ticking of a clock, a cup left on a kitchen counter. These elements aren't decorative. They are integral to the story. Ground the viewer in the rhythm of Caro's life. This is a place where memories reside when that world is suddenly taken from him. The contrast with the unfamiliarity of his journey ahead becomes even more stark. Rosario's world in Los Angeles is built on subtle contrasts. Her apartment is sparse, almost impersonal, but it's not cold. It has an order to it, a meticulousness that reflects her state of mind. Controlled, restrained, waiting. There are small details that show how much she clings to the idea of Caro's photos. Taped near the phone, a cup of tea left untouched while she waits for his call. Her physical space mirrors her emotional condition. Neither fully settled nor entirely empty, just suspended. This visual suspension underscores her internal conflict. Guilt, resolve, longing. The production design leans heavily into realism, but with a purpose. The wealthier neighborhoods where Rosario works are sharply different from the spaces she inhabits. Their cleanliness, symmetry, and aesthetic detachment don't offer comfort. They highlight alienation. The perfectly trimmed lawns and air-conditioned interiors serve as quiet reminders that she's always an outsider in someone else's home. The choice of props here intensifies the emotional divide between Rosario and the family she can't physically care for. Her work setting, rather than symbolizing opportunity, becomes a space of quiet loss. When Caro embarks on his journey, the production design becomes more episodic. Each location marks a new emotional and thematic stage. The border crossing is stark and tense. The van he hides in is cramped, hot, and full of shadows. The claustrophobia is heightened not just through camera work, but by the physical environment itself. The creaky metal floor, the slivers of light, the muffled sounds. You don't just see the danger. You feel it as he moves through different places. Bus stations, diners, fields, rundown apartments. The spaces are rendered with a kind of raw honesty. Each environment feels authentically weathered, with peeling paint, rusted gates, scattered trash, and worn shoes. Chain-link fences reflect the instability and vulnerability of Caro's experience. Yet, there's also beauty here, often found in fleeting details like a mural on a wall, a cluster of children playing in the background, or a sunbeam cutting through a dusty window. These moments prevent the film from slipping into bleakness. The world is hard, yes, but it's not devoid of warmth. One especially impactful setting is the bus terminal, where Caro's and Rosario's stories finally converge. It's a space that would be anonymous in any other context, but in this film, it's imbued with emotional resonance. The setting isn't stylized. It's ordinary plastic chairs humming fluorescent lights, people shuffling in and out. Yet, its very ordinariness makes it extraordinary in this moment. It becomes a place of possible reunion, of fragile hope. The production design doesn't distract here. It recedes just enough to let emotion rise. That restraint is the film's hallmark. Props throughout the film are used with emotional intelligence, giving them symbolic weight. The payphone is a recurring presence, simple metallic, functional, but it carries deep meaning for Caro's. It becomes a kind of compass, her connection point to her mother, her anchor. The image of her sitting near it, sketching its location from memory, turns this unremarkable object into a quiet emblem of love and determination. Similarly, Rosario's cassette tape of Caro's voice is a small object yet holds immense emotional weight. It's not flashy or sentimentalized, but when she plays it, the flat, crackling audio transforms her sterile apartment into a space filled with presence. These props never scream their symbolism. They speak in whispers. The larger environments, especially the open road, are just as crucial. The highways, border towns, and migrant shelters become linear spaces, neither destinations nor safe havens, but bridges between past and future, between fear and hope. The choice to film in real life adds to the authenticity of the experience. Locations add authenticity to the narrative, revealing the gritty realities of the story. There's no green screen gloss. You can see the dust, the heat shimmer, and the tired faces of passers-by. These spaces aren't just where the story happens. They are the story itself. They reflect the meaning of being in transit, searching, and not belonging anywhere except in the direction of someone you love. The production design and props in Under the Same Moon never overpower the story but never vanish into the background either. They echo the film's themes of resilience, separation, and the quiet dignity of those who press forward in the face of impossibility. The world the filmmakers have built isn't idealized or polished. It's deeply human, and that's precisely why it stays with you. The dialogue in Under the Same Moon is a study in subtlety and sincerity, perfectly matching the film's intimate tone and emotional depth. It's never flashy or overwritten. Instead, it embraces a quiet naturalism that feels lived in. Conversations sound like they could happen on any street corner, in any broken-down kitchen, or near a bustling payphone. This grounded approach to dialogue serves the film's themes of separation, survival, and love by giving the characters authentic voices that speak volumes, even in their simplicity. One of the remarkable things about the script is how it balances emotional weight without tipping into melodrama. The characters often say less than they mean, but what they do say carries tremendous impact. Moments of silence between lines often hold as much significance as the spoken words. This economy of language forces the viewer to listen closely, not just to what's said, but to what's left unsaid. It's a film where the pauses, the glances, and the hesitations between phrases become part of the dialogue's emotional texture. For example, the conversations between Caros and his mother, Rosario, are threaded with tenderness and restrained longing. When Caros calls her from a payphone, their words are simple greetings, short updates. Promises are made, but beneath the surface, a powerful current of hope and heartache bubbles. These phone exchanges feel real because they avoid grand declarations. Instead, they capture the ordinary way people cling to connection when separated by distance. There's a kind of poetry in this everyday dialogue. It's both intimate and universal. The script also has moments of gentle humor and sharp wit, especially in Caro's interactions with those he meets on his journey. His youthful innocence contrasts with the tough realities around him, and this contrast is often expressed through the way he speaks. His questions are direct and sometimes blunt, highlighting both his naivety and his courage. For instance, when Carritos confronts strangers or navigates dangerous situations, his straightforwardness cuts through the tension with unexpected clarity, sometimes eliciting a soft smile or a protective response. These moments add texture to the film, preventing it from becoming overwhelmingly heavy. Supporting characters often deliver understated but meaningful dialogue. Enrique, the reluctant protector who becomes a father figure of sorts, speaks sparingly, but his words carry weight. His guarded way of speaking reflects his internal conflict and his growing sense of responsibility. The script uses his few lines to communicate transformation. He moves from cynicism to sacrifice through measured, often clipped dialogue that feels earned rather than forced. Certain standout lines in the film encapsulate its central themes with simplicity and emotional resonance. There's a quiet power in Caro's declaration that he will find his mother no matter what, which isn't delivered as a dramatic speech but as a firm matter-of-fact promise. This line echoes throughout the film not because of grandiosity but because of its pure, unwavering conviction. Similarly, Rosario's brief expressions of guilt and hope in her rare moments of vulnerability reveal complex emotional layers without needing lengthy explanation. These moments linger because they feel truthful expressions of real people caught in impossible circumstances. The bilingual nature of the dialogue, switching fluidly between Spanish and English, also adds authenticity and nuance. Language becomes a symbol of cultural identity and connection, but it also represents barriers and exclusion. When characters switch languages, it signals shifts in mood, trust, or power dynamics. This linguistic interplay enhances the emotional texture of the film without ever feeling like a gimmick. Dialogue's pacing mirrors the film's storytelling rhythm, sometimes deliberate and slow, allowing emotional beats to land fully. There's no rush to fill silence with words. Instead, the script respects the space where feelings simmer beneath the surface, trusting the audience to comprehend the deeper truths behind spoken phrases. Ultimately, the writing in Under the Same Moon thrives on restraint and honesty. It's a script that trusts its characters and audience enough to avoid sentimentality, relying instead on the power of real, heartfelt conversation. The dialogue is not only a vessel for plot, but also a window into the characters' souls, making the film's themes of love, sacrifice, and hope all the more palpable and memorable. Under the Same Moon operates largely within the conventions of the drama and coming-of-age genres, but it does so with a sensitivity and nuance that allow it to feel fresh rather than formulaic. On the surface, it might seem to follow a familiar path. A young child separated from a parent embarks on a perilous journey to reunite with them, encountering dangers and unlikely allies along the way. However, the film quietly subverts several genre expectations. It grounds itself in a realistic portrayal of immigration and family bonds, rather than sensationalizing the story for easy emotional payoff. One of the most notable ways the film diverges from standard genre conventions is its avoidance of overdramatization. Instead of framing Carritos' journey as a straightforward heroic quest full of dramatic rescues and high-octane action, the film presents his travel as a slow, often exhausting passage marked by small, meaningful moments. This deliberate and honest pacing reflects the lived experience of migrants rather than constructing a mythic adventure. The tension is never forced but grows organically from the real dangers of the border, the constant threat of deportation, and the emotional strain of separation. In this way, the film refuses to simplify the migrant experience into clichés of victimhood or triumph. Caros is neither an angelic child nor a helpless victim. He's a resilient, resourceful boy who sometimes makes mistakes and faces setbacks. The people he meets along the way are likewise layered. Some are kind and supportive, others are exploitative or indifferent, but none are caricatures. This complexity challenges the usual good versus evil binaries often found in dramas, and invites a more nuanced understanding of the social realities surrounding immigration. Humor in the film is used effectively to add depth and levity to the story. Sparingly but effectively, often drawing from Caro's youthful perspective, emerges a subtle, sometimes dry humor that naturally arises in his interactions rather than being inserted for comic relief. This approach maintains the overall tone's emotional seriousness while still providing viewers with moments of lightness and humanity. These touches of humor are deeply ingrained in the characters, without undercutting the story's stakes or suspense. The film uses moments of tension, such as border crossings, encounters with authorities, or nights spent in unsafe places, but never as adrenaline-fueled set pieces. Instead, the suspense builds from uncertainty and vulnerability, less about chase scenes and more about the constant low-level anxiety of living under threat. This restrained approach amplifies the emotional impact, making each close call feel personal and real rather than sensational. The drama unfolds around family and sacrifice rather than external conflict. The core tension isn't a battle against a villain, but the challenge of staying connected when circumstances and geography threaten to pull people apart. This shift in focus steers the film away from many of the genre's familiar tropes, such as clear antagonists or climactic showdowns, toward a more introspective and relational storytelling style. Furthermore, the film refuses to resolve the narrative with neat closure, which is rare for a film of this kind. The ending acknowledges that for many migrants, reunion is only one step in a long, uncertain journey. This subtlety in storytelling adds emotional authenticity and resists the temptation to turn the story into a simple feel-good tale. In terms of fresh ideas, the film brings to the forefront the lived experience of migrant children with a level of empathy and complexity that many similar dramas lack. Instead of centering solely on adult perspectives or political debates, it places a child's emotional world and viewpoint at its heart, offering a fresh narrative lens. This choice enriches the genre by highlighting how migration impacts the most vulnerable in unique and profound ways. Ultimately, Under the Same Moon, the film balances its elements carefully, maintaining dramatic tension without sacrificing emotional nuance. It sprinkles in moments of humor that feel earned and builds suspense that's deeply tied to character and circumstance rather than spectacle. This balance helps the film avoid genre cliches while still delivering a compelling, heartfelt story. It respects the intelligence and emotions of its audience by offering a nuanced portrayal of the migrant experience. The story feels both familiar and strikingly honest, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful dramas are told with quiet truth rather than loud gestures. Under the Same Moon stands as a quietly powerful commentary on some of the most pressing contemporary issues surrounding immigration, family separation, and the lived realities of undocumented workers. However, rather than preaching or overtly politicizing its message, the film weaves these complex themes into the fabric of its story with a deft, natural touch. The political and cultural issues are never detached from the characters' human experiences. They arise organically from the narrative itself, making the social commentary feel integral rather than imposed. The film tackles the harsh reality of immigration policy's impact on families, especially children. It doesn't present immigration as a distant political debate, but as a deeply personal crisis affecting real people. Caro's journey is a vivid embodiment of the emotional and physical toll that borders laws and economic pressures exert on families. His determination to reunite with his mother highlights how immigration issues are not abstract statistics but stories of love, sacrifice, and resilience. The film's approach to these sensitive topics is marked by empathy and nuance. It avoids caricatures of border enforcement or migrant communities, instead showing the complexity of the situation. The film explores the fear and hardships faced by undocumented workers, the economic necessity that drives migration, and the moral dilemmas imposed on parents forced to choose between safety and family unity. The characters live in the tension between hope and hardship, and the film respects that tension without oversimplifying it. Under the Same Moon also touches on cultural identity and belonging in subtle ways. The bilingual dialogue and the portrayal of Mexican-American immigrant life reflect a bicultural reality that is often overlooked. The film doesn't just show the struggle to cross a border. It explores the challenge of navigating two worlds, neither of which feels fully home. This cultural layering deepens the emotional texture and grounds the political themes in lived experience. Importantly, the film doesn't fall into the trap of victimization or sensationalism. It portrays characters with dignity, showing them as resilient and resourceful rather than helpless. Caro's bravery and Rosario's quiet strength challenge stereotypes and invite viewers to see beyond headlines. To the humanity behind immigration debates, the film's tone is gentle yet unflinching, allowing it to handle political and social realities with care. It presents moments of danger and despair without exploiting them for dramatic effect, emphasizing the everyday courage required to endure such circumstances. This restrained approach respects the complexity of immigration issues and the dignity of those affected. The film subtly critiques systemic inequalities and bureaucratic hurdles that compound the suffering of immigrant families through scenes depicting border crossings, temporary shelters, and interactions with authorities. It highlights how institutions often add layers of difficulty and fear rather than support the choice to tell the story. The film primarily tells the story through the eyes of a child, adding a unique perspective that amplifies its social commentary. Caro's innocence contrasts with the harsh realities around him, emphasizing the profound human cost of immigration policies. His journey becomes a metaphor for hope and perseverance amid systemic adversity. Overall, the film's handling of contemporary issues feels woven into the narrative's emotional core. The political and cultural themes are external decorations, but the soil from which the characters' stories grow. This integration makes the film's statement on immigration and family separation resonate deeply, leaving viewers with a vivid sense of the human stakes behind headlines and policies. Under the Same Moon lingers long after the credits roll precisely because of its emotional resonance. It doesn't rely on overt manipulation or melodrama to tug the heartstrings. Instead, it invites viewers into a deeply human experience that feels honest, raw, and profoundly relatable. The emotional journey it charts is one of quiet endurance, hope, and heartbreak, a blend that pulls the audience in and keeps them fully invested from beginning to end. There are moments in the film that elicit a range of strong, genuine reactions. Caro's innocence and determination inspire a warmth and tenderness that can bring a soft smile or even laughter, especially when his childlike perspective clashes with the harshness of the world around him. These moments of lightness are never out of place. They're woven into the story with such natural ease that they feel like brief, necessary breaths of relief amid a challenging journey. Yet, the film's emotional power is most potent in its quieter, more restrained scenes. Sitting alone on a bus or the scenes where Rosario listens to her son's voice on the phone, carrying a crushing weight, invite tears. They don't come through loud sobbing or dramatic outbursts, but through subtle expressions. A glance, a pause, a trembling lip. This understated emotional language allows the audience to feel the character's pain and longing as if it were their own, making the experience intimate and personal. The tension throughout the film isn't frenetic or sensationalized. Instead, it builds a persistent undercurrent of anxiety and uncertainty, mirroring the real fear of separation and loss. When Carritos faces danger or betrayal, the suspense isn't just about physical threat. It's about what might happen to a child caught in a vast, indifferent system. This emotional tension keeps viewers on edge, not because of flashy action, but because they care deeply about what's at stake. Under the Same Moon invites reflection by showing the resilience of love amid adversity. It sparks conversations about family sacrifice and the immigrant experience by putting faces and stories to issues often discussed abstractly. Its emotional honesty encourages viewers to think beyond political debates and statistics, prompting empathy and understanding. The film's emotional complexity also rewards repeat viewings. There's a richness in the small gestures and nuance of the performances that may be missed the first time around but become clearer with familiarity. Watching it again deepens appreciation for how it balances hope and despair, strength and vulnerability, innocence and harsh reality. What makes the emotional resonance so lasting is the film's refusal to offer easy answers or tidy resolutions. The story honors the complexity of its characters' lives and the ongoing nature of their struggles. This honesty leaves viewers with a sense of both melancholy and hope, a reminder that love can endure even in the face of overwhelming obstacles. Ultimately, Under the Same Moon feels less like a story being told to an audience and more like an invitation to witness and feel the reality of a world too often ignored. Its emotional impact is subtle but profound, engaging the heart as much as the mind and ensuring that its themes and characters stay with viewers long after they've watched. This film stakes a unique claim within the realm of immigration dramas and coming-of-age stories, standing apart not by grand spectacle or heavy-handed messaging, but by its ability to convey a profound and moving message. Through its intimate focus and emotional subtlety, this film about immigration diverges from many others that emphasize political conflict, border violence, or broad social critique. Instead, it narrows its lens to a deeply personal story, a child's journey propelled by love rather than politics. This shift from the macro to the micro offers a fresh perspective that feels both relatable and urgent in the context of similar films exploring migration or family separation, such as Senra or The Visitor. Under the Same Moon chooses a gentler tone, yet no less impactful. It avoids the often bleak or gritty aesthetic common to the genre, opting instead for moments of warmth and hope that balance hardship without downplaying it. This creates a narrative rhythm that feels less like a relentless hardship chronicle and more like a testament to resilience and human connection. It's a quieter form of storytelling that uses small gestures and everyday interactions to convey the emotional stakes rather than relying on intense conflict or dramatic turning points. Looking at Patricia Riggen's directorial work, Under the Same Moon marks a significant debut that sets the foundation for her thematic interests. Stories rooted in family identity and cultural intersection are compared to her later films, which might explore these themes with different genres or scales. This film remains her most grounded and emotionally raw work. It's a film that refuses embellishment or cinematic excess, instead relying on simplicity and authenticity. This approach underscores Riggen's ability to craft stories that feel personal and specific even while addressing broader social issues. Under the Same Moon pushes boundaries in its focus on a child's voice without slipping into sentimentality or oversimplification. This delicate balance is rare and contributes to the film's lasting impact. It's not just a story about immigration. It's a story about childhood hope and the ways people endure separation with courage and quiet strength. This focus offers a fresh emotional core that sets it apart from more conventional or politically driven films in the genre. Visually and tonally, the film also avoids familiar formulas. Instead of high-stakes action sequences or dramatic confrontations, it unfolds through measured pacing, intimate framing, and naturalistic performances. This restraint allows the emotional texture to develop organically and invites viewers to engage with the characters on a human level. Under the Same Moon offers a fresh and deeply human perspective within the social drama genre. It diverges from familiar formulas by focusing on a child's experience, its understated storytelling, and its emotional authenticity. This refusal to conform to genre expectations about closure or catharsis makes the film feel more honest and thoughtful. It acknowledges that stories like Kairos are ongoing and often exist alongside uncertainty and struggle. The film's stylistic choice to level rather than through spectacle honors the story's realism and enhances its emotional resonance. It fits comfortably within the social drama genre while resisting the pull toward easy resolutions or neatly packaged endings. This refusal to conform to genre expectations about closure or catharsis makes the film feel more authentic and thoughtful. Patricia Riggen's filmography includes Under the Same Moon, which stands as a foundational work that highlights her skill in portraying culturally rich, emotionally complex stories without resorting to cliches or grandiosity. The combination of thematic focus, tone, and narrative restraint gives the film a distinctive place in the landscape of immigration dramas. Beneath its straightforward narrative lies a rich tapestry of subtle visual cues, recurring motifs, and layered meanings that deepen the storytelling and echo the film's core themes of separation, connection, and resilience. These elements are never shouted from the screen. Instead, they emerge quietly, inviting viewers to look closer and feel more profoundly the emotional currents running through the story. One of the most persistent motifs is that of crossing borders, not just the physical border between Mexico and the United States, but also the emotional and psychological boundaries that separate the characters. This motif appears visually and thematically throughout the film. The border itself is portrayed less as a line on a map and more as an intangible barrier of fear, hope, and longing. Scenes showing fences, highways, or distant cityscapes often frame characters in a way that emphasizes the distance between mother and son. Childhood and adulthood blur into dreams and reality, these visual reminders reinforcing how separation defines the character's existence and underscoring the emotional weight of Caro's journey. Another recurring element is the use of phones and brief, fragmented communication. Scenes where Rosario listens to Caro's voice over the phone or speaks to her from across the miles become charged with meaning, symbolizing connection amidst separation and highlighting how technology bridges distances, yet cannot fully replace physical presence. The phone calls carry a bittersweet quality, hope intertwined with despair, encapsulating the immigrant experience of holding on to family across barriers. Light and shadow play subtle but meaningful roles. The film often bathes Caros in soft, natural light during moments of innocence or hope, contrasting sharply with darker, shadowed environments during scenes of danger or uncertainty. This interplay visually mirrors his internal world, with the flickers of optimism amidst the looming fears of the unknown. At times, Caros is silhouetted against the expansive American cityscape, a visual metaphor for his smallness in a vast, indifferent world, yet also his courage standing out against the enormity of his challenges. A gentle but consistent emphasis is placed on everyday objects and rituals that ground the character's humanity and cultural identity. From the food Rosario prepares to the small trinkets Caros carries, these details serve as anchors of home and memory, reminding viewers that beneath the political and social complexities are individuals with histories, traditions, and love. This grounding in the tangible world makes the story feel lived in and real. The motif of journey itself is layered beyond the physical track. Caro's movement is as much about growth and transformation as it is about reaching a destination. The film subtly charts this through changes in his demeanor, interactions, and choices. Each step across the border also becomes a step toward a deeper understanding of the sacrifices his family has made. This layering enriches the coming-of-age dimension without losing sight of the broader context. Visual framing also enhances the theme of surveillance and vulnerability. Scenes where Caros is watched by authorities, strangers, or even the camera itself create a sense of exposure and risk, making the audience complicit in observing a child navigating a world that scrutinizes and often threatens him. This visual language deepens the emotional tension without resorting to explicit threats. Music and sound design, while not strictly visual, contribute to these layers by underscoring emotional beats and transitions. Often, traditional Mexican melodies are woven into these auditory motifs, evoking cultural roots and nostalgia. These auditory motifs complement the visual cues, enhancing the film's mood and tone. All these elements, including imagery, phones, light, shadow, cultural details, and the journey itself are intertwined. Transformation and the sense of surveillance work together to create a storytelling environment rich with symbolic meaning. They elevate the film beyond a simple narrative, transforming it into a nuanced meditation on displacement, family bonds, and hope. Each time the viewer catches one of these subtle touches, it deepens the emotional and thematic impact, inviting a more reflective and immersive experience. Under the Same Moon is a standalone film, not part of a series or franchise. However, its place within the broader context of immigration narratives and socially conscious cinema is significant. While it does not contribute to an overarching fictional narrative or episodic storyline, it participates in a collective cinematic conversation about the immigrant experience, family separation, and border realities that has grown increasingly urgent in recent decades. Although not a historical film in the traditional sense, Under the Same Moon situates itself within a very real contemporary socio-political moment. It captures the lived realities of undocumented Mexican immigrants in the early 2000s. The film's portrayal of immigration is grounded in factual experience and cultural authenticity, immersing the audience in a world shaped by economic necessity, legal proctoriality, and emotional sacrifice. The film's setting and characters resonate as authentic rather than dramatized or fictionalized, contributing to its immersive quality. Instead of recounting specific historical events, the film offers a deeply human snapshot of ongoing social issues. Conditions captures the atmosphere of an era marked by increasing border enforcement, the rising prominence of immigrant labor in American industries, and the emotional toll on families divided by policy and circumstance. Scenes of crossings, work environments, and interactions with authorities reflect realities that many viewers may recognize from news or personal experience, giving the film a documentary-like immediacy. The immersion is enhanced by cultural details, language traditions, food, music, and other elements that root the story in Mexican and Mexican-American life. These elements go beyond mere setting. They build a textured world that feels lived in and true to the characters' identities. This cultural specificity adds to the film's credibility and emotional impact, making the narrative feel both personal and representative. In this way, the film functions as a vital narrative piece within the larger mosaic of stories about migration and identity in the Americas. It contributes to a deeper understanding of the human costs behind headlines and policies without needing to be part of a serialized story or historical reenactment. Instead, it immerses viewers in a present-day reality that is historical in its social significance and urgent in its emotional truth. By focusing on individual experience rather than broad historical sweep, the film invites empathy and connection, allowing viewers to grasp the complexities and contradictions of migration in a nuanced way. This focus on the personal within the political is what makes Under the Same Moon feel immersive and vital. Anchoring its story in a particular time and place, the film speaks to universal themes of family, hope, and endurance. Under the Same Moon was made on a modest budget, especially compared to big studio productions. Its financial resources were limited, but the film's production quality reflects a careful and efficient use of those resources rather than relying on flashy effects or large-scale set pieces. Instead, the film focuses on authentic locations, naturalistic performances, and intimate storytelling. This approach allows it to achieve a polished, emotionally rich atmosphere without meeting a blockbuster budget. The production design, cinematography, and music all contribute to a quality that feels genuine and immersive, proving that a modest budget can still deliver a powerful cinematic experience when paired with a clear vision and skilled craftsmanship. The filmmakers made smart choices to prioritize character and story over spectacle, which plays well within the film's overall tone and message. Under the Same Moon, a film that explores themes of love, loss, and family, achieved critical and cultural acclaim but struggled to find mainstream commercial success. Its niche subject matter and indie sensibility limited its appeal to a broader audience, preventing it from dominating box office charts like blockbuster films. However, it found a strong following in festivals, house circuits, and among viewers interested in socially conscious cinema and stories about immigration and family. The film's marketing strategy focused on word-of-mouth and critical acclaim rather than large-scale advertising campaigns. This approach helped it reach its intended audience, viewers seeking heartfelt and realistic drama. While it didn't achieve massive commercial success, its positive audience reception, particularly for its emotional honesty and performances, contributed to its lasting presence beyond its theatrical run. The film gained attention through home video streaming platforms and community screenings, further expanding its reach. Despite its modest financial impact, the film's cultural resonance surpassed its box office numbers. Ultimately, the modest budget was well matched to the film's storytelling goals, and while it wasn't a blockbuster financial success, its production quality and heartfelt narrative allowed it to connect meaningfully with audiences, earning a lasting place in discussions around immigration and family cinema. La Maluna, the film's director, is available for streaming and digital rental in various regions. While it may not be included in subscription-based streaming services, it can be rented or purchased through several digital platforms, such as Amazon Video, where it's available for rent or purchase in HD. Rentals typically have a 30-day start date and a 48-hour viewing period. Apple TV also offers the film for rent or purchase in HD, and Fandango at Home provides options to rent or buy the film. Film in HD is available for rent or purchase in HD Spectrum on demand. The film is available for rent, but please note that availability may vary based on your location and the platform's regional restrictions. It's advisable to check the specific platform for the most accurate and up-to-date information. If you're interested in exploring more films with similar themes, Platforms like Amazon Video and Apple TV often provide recommendations based on your viewing history. Under the Same Moon is a film rich with emotionally charged moments that linger long after the credits roll. The best scenes are not just pivotal plot points, but carefully crafted emotional beats where the story's themes, characters, and mood converge with great impact. Let's dive into a few of these standout moments and unpack why they resonate so deeply. Caro's journey begins with the decision to cross the border. One of the film's earliest and most powerful moments is when Caro, faced with the sudden loss of his grandmother and the absence of his mother, resolved to cross into the United States. This decision marks a turning point that shifts the story from quiet domestic life to a tense and uncertain adventure. What makes this scene compelling is its emotional clarity. It's not just about a physical journey, but a child stepping into an adult world filled with danger and hope. The camera lingers on Caro's face, capturing his determination, fear, and courage without words. This moment sets the tone for the entire film, highlighting the themes of resilience and love that drive the story. The border crossing scenes are tense and hope intertwined. The scenes depicting Carito's attempts to cross the border stand out for their raw intensity. The cinematography here captures the physical danger, harsh desert landscapes, shadowy figures, and moments of near capture, while never losing sight of Caro's emotional state. The film balances suspense with tenderness, showing Caro's vulnerability and bravery. The use of visual elements is crucial in conveying the emotional impact of the story. Natural light, close-ups of his expressions, and minimal dialogue amplify the tension in these harrowing scenes, never exploiting them. Instead, they create a visceral experience that makes viewers feel the stakes at every step, especially when the phone conversations between Caros and Rosario, the film's emotional heart, pulse strongest. The quiet, intimate phone calls between mother and son stand out. One particular call stands out. Rosario listens to Carito's voice, and without dramatic dialogue, her expression alone conveys the crushing weight of separation and longing. This silence, this stillness, is profound, communicating volumes about sacrifice and love. The simplicity of these moments, no need for tearful speeches, allows the actors to deliver nuanced performances and the director's subtle touch to shine. These conversations remind the audience of the emotional distance that no technology can bridge, yet they also reinforce the unbreakable bond between mother and child. Caro's encounter with Enrique, whose character provides both tension and unexpected kindness, adds complexity to the narrative. His interactions with Caros are layered, sometimes brusque, sometimes protective. A key scene unfolds when Enrique decides to help Caros, shifting from reluctant companion to guardian figure. This relationship adds depth to the story, showing how strangers can become surrogate family in difficult times. The scene where Enrique shares his own story and motivations deepens the film's themes of sacrifice and survival. The chemistry between the actors here adds emotional texture, making this turning point feel earned and genuine. The climactic reunion at the end, the reunion between Caros and Rosario, is charged with a blend of relief, joy, and the scars of hardship. It avoids melodrama and instead opts for a quiet, heartfelt moment. Two people reunited after long separation, each changed by their experiences. The framing, lighting, and pacing all work together to create an intimate atmosphere that invites the viewer into this private emotional space. The subtle smiles lingering, the looks exchanged, and the shared silence speak volumes about the journey they've endured. This scene encapsulates the film's core message about the strength of family ties, despite distance and adversity. These moments, among others, reveal the moon's mastery in blending small, intimate human experiences with larger social realities. The film's best scenes are those where emotions are conveyed through subtle gestures, carefully chosen visuals, and quiet storytelling, leaving a lasting emotional imprint that transcends the screen.